I'm going to show you how to use the table. We'll also look at the trace button a little bit to find points on particular graphs. So I've got two different graphs here, two different equations. I'm in my y equals screen. You want to make sure that none of these plots are highlighted because we are going to be taking a look at some graphs. If one of them is highlighted, just arrow up and hit enter to deselect. None of mine are highlighted, so I'm good to go. You'll notice that the equal sign for my first equation is not highlighted, but the equal sign for my second is highlighted. I'm going to actually select my first equation, so if you want to kind of follow along with what I'm doing, you can go ahead and just type in 3x plus 2. I'm unhighlighting or deselecting x squared. So I'm asking my calculator to take a look at y equals 3x plus 2. I can hit graph to take a look at this. I can look for points by using my trace button. Puts a cursor on the graph. I can use my right arrow and left arrow to come up with points, but I'm stuck with what the calculator is giving me. I can also use the trace button, so I'm here in trace, to find other points on the graph. So if I want to find a point, say what's happening at 1, so if I want to find the point at 1, I'm still in trace, I just type the number 1 and it says, oh, x equals 1, I hit enter, and it's going to give you the y coordinate. If you don't have these coordinates here at the bottom, I want you to quickly go to your format button. You can skip this part if you already have the x and the y at the bottom. Go into second and format. Make sure everything is highlighted on the left hand side here. If anything isn't highlighted, just arrow down and hit enter to highlight. Specifically, we want those coordinates on. So once you've got that, your screen will look like mine. Also, let's see, let me go back to the graph. Also, if the graphing screen doesn't look like mine here, you can just do a zoom and then go down to number 6. You can type number 6 or arrow down and zoom standard. That will give you the default viewing screen for the graph, which is -10 to 10 in both directions. Okay, so again, you can use trace to find x and their y coordinates. So instead of using the arrow, I could type in, say, the number 5. 5 should give me 15 plus 2, it should give me 17. I could hit enter, and sure enough, it's going to give me 17. If I try to do something outside of this viewing screen, like 12, though, it will say error invalid. And that's because I'm outside of the viewing screen. So there are some limitations to that trace feature. I'm going to go ahead and just stay on quit and then hit enter. Let's go back to the graph. So I'm going to hit graph. I want to use the table now. So I'm going to use the table to find values on my graph. If I just hit the table right now, which is second of graph, so I go second, graph, I'll see that my table actually has just some default numbers here, 0, 1, 2, and 3, and it shows me the numbers that are matching up. It says press plus for delta table. I'm not going to worry about that. What I really want to do is I want to set the table up so it doesn't automatically give me values. I want to type in the x values. So I'm going to go up and do the table set. So second and then window for table set. Table start, these aren't going to matter because we're going to change the independent variable, the x variables, to be ask. So I'm just going to bypass table start and delta table. That's how it skips from 1 to 2 to 3 by ones. Go down to independent. I want independent to be ask. So I'm going to arrow over and then hit enter to highlight. I'm going to leave dependent on auto. Now take a look at your table. So second, table. I'm still looking at the equation y1. Remember what y1 is. Let me go back to y equals 3x plus 2. So if I go to my table, second table, if I type in 0, it should be 3 times 0 plus 2. Enter, sure enough, there's 2. I can put 5. Sure enough, there's that 17. I can type 12. Remember, this is the one that trace wouldn't give me, but this one will give it to me whether or not it's on my viewing screen. So I could even type in something like -100. So -100 using the negative sign next to the enter, and then I come up with this one. So that gives me values for the first equation, just a really nice way to evaluate these functions. Let's look at the second equation. If I hit y equals, and I want to also consider the x squared function, I'm going to arrow down. I'm going to arrow over to the equals and hit enter to select. Now if I look at my table, so second table, I have two different y values. You'll notice that the second y values are the x's squared. 0 squared is 0, 5 squared is 25, and so on. So now I can go ahead and evaluate y values for x squared. So I could put in something like 4 and I should get 16, 6 and I should get 36, and so on. Let's say that you wanted to clear these values. So if I wanted to clear them, I'm just going to arrow to whatever one I want to clear. I hit delete and it clears that entire row. So I can delete this and start over. If I go back to y equals, say I only wanted to look at those squared values, I use my right arrow. I arrow over so that I'm highlighting the equal sign and I hit enter. If I go back to my graph, I'm going to see just those y2 values. So 5, I can even type decimals in here, 1.3, and it gives me 1.69. If I were to type in something with a bunch of decimal points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I hit enter, the calculator is actually rounding here. If you use your arrow to highlight that y value that we just computed, the whole y value doesn't fit in all the decimal places, but if you put your cursor on top of it, then it will give you the additional decimal places that it can give you. So we've seen how to use the table. We saw how to set this table up, going to table set, and we also worked with trace a little bit. Happy graphing!